They licked Donald Trump's boots. And who was it that said, I love you, Trump? Who has said that before? Bolsonaro himself while he was president, believe it or not. So they're so jealous of Lula, you know? So they keep talking about Lula and trying to mock Lula because Lula is going to meet with Donald Trump. Look at what he said. Huh. But wasn't Flavio Bolsonaro the guy who champions Yankee imperialism? And what about the narrative that Lula defends national sovereignty? The truth is that Lula, being the sly guy he is, gave one speech for his supporters and another for the elites. This was written by the son of former President Jair Bolsonaro. Do you know what this is? It's envy of Lula. But what a petty and mean envy, isn't it? They're jealous because Lula is going to meet with Donald Trump. And he, Eduardo Bolsonaro, can't even get through the first gate. They're at the palace of Donald Trash. Are you getting the message? Neither he nor Flavio Bolsonaro can get in because Donald Trump doesn't want to talk to bootlickers. And by the way, Donald Trump likes to use the suck-ups. Like them, but Donald Trump doesn't respect suck-ups. That's the situation. Now, there's a big difference between Lula and the Bolsonaro supporters. Lula goes there to talk to Donald Trump. Face to face. He's not going there to lick Donald Trump's boots. Nor, for that matter, to put on a MAGA hat or salute the American flag. Lula is going there as the president of the Federative Republic of Brazil, and he will seek to negotiate agreements that bring benefits to Brazil. The United States is Brazil's third largest trading partner. There is Argentina, China, and the United States. So Lula really has to go there as a stateswoman to talk and seek the best for Brazil. And he will sit down and be received by Trump. Something that you, Eduardo Bolsonaro, you, Flavio Bolsonaro, no matter how much you humiliate yourselves, no matter how much you act like vassals, like bootlickers, like mutts, Donald Trump won't meet with you. Are you getting the message? So there's a big difference. The vassals who put themselves, who act as vassals before Donald Trump are your father, your mother, your son, and so on. And all of you. Lula is not. And one thing. When did Lula rise the most in the polls? My handsome one and my beautiful one, I'm asking you, don't let me talk by myself. Don't let me talk by myself. Please, please help me.
I'll ask the question again.
When did Lula rise the most in the election polls? It was when there was the conflict. Brazil belongs to Brazilians. Sovereignty is not negotiable. Let me tell you something. Some of you asked me something like this. When we were attacked by Donald Trump with the Bolsonaro supporters backing him, that was when Lula rose the most in the polls. Because the Brazilian people understood that the one who was a patriot and was defending Brazil's interests was Lula, while the Bolsonaristas, bootlickers, and many on the right were acting like servants. On their knees before Donald Trump. That's when Lula rose the most in the polls. So let me tell you something. Some of you brought this up here in the comments. That's why it's so important for you to always comment, because I read the comments. And you asked me this, Andrea Gonçalves, do you think Lula should go? Isn't it dangerous, Andrea Gonçalves? Lula should go. Lula is the president of Brazil. Lula represents us, and he will do this with great dignity and respect for our sovereignty. He must go. But Andrea Gonçalves, what if Donald Trump mistreats Lula? Lula will not be Zelensky. Lula will stand up to him. And Lula will rise in the polls again. Lula is not a lackey. Vladimir Zelensky was humiliated worldwide. When Trump hosted him there, do you remember that? If Donald Trump tries to do that to Lula, Lula will go after Trump. Obviously, Lula isn't foolish or anything. Lula will know how to do what needs to be done. Lula will rise in the polls like never before. And here's the thing, the Bolsonaro supporters are terrified that this will happen. They're terrified that this will happen, especially because Donald Trump, he's unpredictable. And we all know that Lula made several statements criticizing the Trump administration, whether it's because of the tariff policies or because of the stance on war, like the attack they carried out together with Israel against Iran. A series of positions taken by the United States that are wrong. And Lula didn't stay silent about any of them. He made an official statement and took a stand. Regarding the release of Alexandra Ramaj, he used the principle of reciprocity, also removing United States police officers who work here in Brazil. And if Donald Trump goes after Lula, Lula will not be Vladimir Zelensky. And Lula will go after him. And Lula will rise in the polls like never before. Andrea Gonçalves, unless that happens. If Trump doesn't do that and does what needs to be done, treat him with civility and courtesy, as a head of state should treat another, that'd be great too. Lula has nothing to lose. On the contrary, Lula will show again that he is strong and that he is the president of the republic, despite the attacks from traitorous senators, Davi Alcolumbre and coups supporting federal deputies, Nicolas Ferreira, that in any case, he is the president of the republic and he is respected all over the world as a great statesman. So in this situation here, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. That's why Eduardo Bolsonaro talks nonsense. Thank you. It seems like he has some extremely impaired cognitive function. Inoperative. Did you understand, my dear? So Lula can't dodge it. Lula is our president. Whether you like it or not, whether you want it or not, Lula is our president. And I reiterate, the United States is Brazil's third largest trading partner. It trails only China and Argentina. So he really has to go and talk to the president, demand respect, and also show respect. And if that doesn't happen, he will leave with great dignity. Making it clear that sovereignty isn't negotiable. And that Brazil belongs to us. That PIX belongs to us. And that even though there is a group of lackeys in Brazil, the majority of the Brazilian people are not submissive and are not a colony of anyone. And because these people here think so, and the fake patriots think so, that they are inferior, cognitively, intellectually, even aesthetically, to the American bootlickers. But that's not how we see it. And Donald Trump is not the world's sheriff and not Brazil's either. And that's what Lula is going to show. And that's why they're so desperate about this visit. Visit, I repeat, which they won't make because they won't be received and they never are. Donald Trump. It's that simple. So what would we say to Lula on this visit? And then, tudo. President Lula is great. Dignified. And the way things are going, he'll be back. It's that simple. And what do I think? That's not nearly enough, my dear. Go with God, Lula, and come back with him. This is our message. For Lula, meanwhile, I told you during the 8:30 live stream that the Attorney General went after Andre Mendonça regarding the investigation into the INSS fraud. And the Attorney General said Mauricio Camisotti's testimony had to be retaken. Mauricio Camisotti, a big businessman who had free access in and out of the Ministry of Social Security under Onibus Lorenzoni and was one of those responsible for millions and millions in INSS fraud, making improper deductions from retirees and pensioners. He was arrested last year in the operation where the bald guy from INSS was also arrested, and they are still in jail. And Mauricio Camisotti turned state's witness. So what happened? This cooperation statement reached the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General said this cooperation statement is not valid. Repeat the procedure. Repeat the testimony in my presence. If not, it's worthless. And here's the thing. The PGR, the Public Prosecutor's Office, is the one responsible for the criminal prosecution. If the PGR doesn't file charges, there is no criminal prosecution. There is no case, no prosecution. So the Attorney General drew Andre Mendonça's attention to it. Repeat the act. In other words, if you don't redo the act, the cooperation agreement won't be valid. If you act up, I'll toss all of this out. Andre Mendonça. Why didn't you call the Attorney General? For God's sake, guys. This is about the Social Security fraud. Guess what just happened now? Banco Master fraud. The Attorney General's office said the same thing. Borcaro's cooperation agreement. I'm the one who has to sign it. I'm the one who has to be present. Only you, Andre Mendonça, and the federal police. No, that's not going to happen. And I keep thinking, for me, it's a mistake. Why didn't they call the prosecutor's office to take part in all the proceedings, especially the plea bargains? Exactly. So there's no risk of everything falling apart. Andre Mendonça. A Bolsonaro supporter, you see? We're discussing Andre Mendonça, not Alexandre de Moraes. Why did you do that, man? Then it seems like, you really want everything to end up swept under the rug, Then it gets annoying. Oh no, look here, see? The Attorney General's office takes the lead in Borcaro's plea bargain, and the federal police are left trailing behind amid tensions between investigative agencies. This is basic stuff, guys. The Attorney General was needed for every step in the proceedings, especially plea bargains, because he files the charges. If he doesn't, he orders the case closed. He is the one with authority to bring criminal charges. He alone has the authority to bring criminal charges. If there is no indictment, there is no case. And they are carrying out investigative acts and actions without the participation of the Prosecutor General's office. They will have to redo everything all over again with the presence of the Prosecutor General. Andre Mendonça really messed up, didn't he? Not to say something worse, right? Andre Mendonça, help me for God's sake, man. Look, Andre Mendonça. Oh my God. May 1st was Workers' Day, right, guys? A very important day. Look who got screwed over here. The court is forcing Havan to provide chairs for employees who work standing up. But that's not all. Look at this. The Labor Court of Mato Grosso granted an injunction in a lawsuit filed by the Labor Prosecutor's Office against the Havan branch in Rondonópolis, ordering the company to provide seats with backrests for workers and to adopt measures aimed at improving ergonomic conditions in the workplace. The decision provides for a fine of 50,000 in case of non-compliance. You might say, no, Andrea, some people are just mean, right? They think the person has to stand for 6 hours, 8 hours a day. That doesn't exist, guys. The thing is, they didn't even have seats to sit on when they were resting. Yeah, that little break, they have to rest, have a snack, or go to the bathroom. If they wanted to sit down, they had to go to the toilet and sit on the toilet because there was nowhere for them to sit. This one, look, who opposed ending the 6 days on, 1 day off schedule. Yeah, this one who said that Brazil would turn into Venezuela if Lula won. And Havan had the biggest profit in its history last year. More than 18 billion reais in profit that the companies of this guy from Havan, the old man from Havan had. That's the one who said that Brazil would turn into Venezuela if Lula won. He posted record profits last year. Do you think he'll come out and say he was wrong? That actually, under Lula's government, he made the biggest profit of his life? He's not going to do that. Soon, what is he going to become? Whose sidekick is he going to be? Guess. Flavio Rachadinhas. Why? Why? Because Lula tries to include the poorest and the workers in the budget, and those kinds of people hate that. And they hate poor people too, unless it's to clean his floor and serve him, and preferably standing because they can't even sit down. That's what this is. Look. How much do you want to bet? In a little while, he'll be just like Flavio Bolsonaro's parrot, his little sidekick. Yeah, just wait and you'll see. Who said that Brazil would turn into Venezuela? The guy is getting richer and richer every year. And during Lula's government, he got richer than ever. But why, Andre? Because Lula brings stability. Lula is a great statesman. He brings stability. He's not like Bolsonaro. One day, Bolsonaro would say one thing. He would pick a fight. Then the next week, Bolsonaro would take back what he had said, that lie. He would forget that he had lied and lie again. And he would create another story with a different situation. It was sometimes the National Congress, the mayor, the governors, the Supreme Federal Court, or the armed forces, and he would stir things up. Then there's no way to grow economically. Why? It becomes unstable. The economy becomes unstable. The guy, the head of the nation, was unpredictable. Not Lula. Lula is calm. Lula governs mainly with the well-being of the poorest and most vulnerable in mind, but he also creates satisfactory and stable conditions for entrepreneurs to grow in Brazil. That's the difference. Then some crooks like these come along saying they're right-wing, for God, country, family, conservative, and only that they don't feel anything. He should have come forward, apologized, and admitted he was wrong. But he's not going to do that. But soon a little parakeet will show up on Flavio Bolsonaro's shoulder. You'll see. Why? Because as my grandmother said, everyone gives what they have. They're just more of the same and not much. They don't like poor people. And they don't like a government that makes poor people a priority. Nor do they care about workers. Workers are only good for being exploited, producing wealth, and not enjoying any of it. And they even think that if there's any blame for the collapse, it's on him and the worker, even though it's not.
Jesus!
And there are Bolsonaro supporters who now that it's a new amnesty. Since they didn't get the amnesty and the sentencing guidelines will soon become law, I'm not going to explain again the whole situation I talked about in the 8:30 live stream. Everything will be in the hands of the Federal Supreme Court. The sentence reduction won't be automatic. Everyone will have to file a petition. This will go to Alexandre de Moraes. Meanwhile, a direct constitutional challenge will suspend everything to review the case's merits. By then, most people will have already served their sentences. But what's happening? There's a Bolsonaro supporter who has introduced a new amnesty bill. This time they want amnesty for the money, for the cash. Because everyone who was convicted for January 8th was sentenced to pay compensation of 30 million reais. Everyone who was convicted. Some were sentenced to 5 million depending on the situation, the circumstances. So now they are presenting a bill for financial amnesty. So they don't have to pay for the damage they caused on January 8th. Look who brought it. Of course, it's a Bolsonaro supporter, right? After the veto was overturned, after Lula's vetoes to the sentencing bill, I'll blow it up. Bolsonaro supporting deputies now want a kind of financial amnesty for truck drivers who blocked roads after the 2022 elections. The proposal was presented by Congressman Delegado Caveira from the Liberal Party of Pará. And it proposes the cancellation of debts related to fines imposed by the Supreme Court for prohibiting roadblocks during protests against Lula. After the sentencing, Bolsonaro supporters now want financial amnesty. That's the problem. That's the problem with loosening the rules. Why? When there's a loophole, when a loophole is opened, what tends to happen with that loophole? For example, in your house. Suddenly a wall in your house developed a crack. That happens, right? Unfortunately, sometimes it does. A crack opens up. What tends to happen with a crack like this? To open more. This is the same kind of thing. If you leave an opening, they'll come at you until you leave even more openings and loosen things up even further. That's why many times there are situations in our lives where no means no, never means never. Because if you say maybe, or who knows, you simply won't have peace in your life anymore. Isn't that right? It is. It's the same thing here when it comes to the coup plotter. Once you loosen things up a little, they keep pressing forward until before long everything gets loosened up. And everyone will be forgiven, amnestied, have their sentences recalculated. Consequence. A coup, before long we'll be facing an attempted coup. I even dare to say that if Flavio Bolsonaro wins the elections, I rebuke that in Jesus' name. Get out, devil.
If he wins, the coup will come.
What Bolsonaro couldn't do, he will try to do again. Because everyone gives what they have. There's no point in waiting for someone to give you what they don't have to offer. Everyone will give what they have. And what he has is a mask. Because now Flavio Bolsonaro put on the mask, right? He put on the mask of being moderate. No, I'm moderate. No, I'm an improved Bolsonaro. I got vaccinated. He put on a mask of being moderate. But masks are meant to come off. Get one thing into your head. Every mask falls off. And it's just a matter of time. You just have to wait a little. Give it some time. Because the mask will fall off. That's the case with Flavio Bolsonaro. And then Flavio Bolsonaro is just more of the same and a lot of nothing when it comes to his father. Coup plotter. Mocking. Cruel, inhuman, incompetent. And I would add, kickback scheme, little Melissa, and only those unwilling to see it miss it. And this here is the consequence. From the opening that was created, that soon will be such a big crack that the wall will fall. And we have to be very careful and not play around. Don't be fooled by Flavio Bolsonaro. And a new poll came out today. Look here, it's a real-time big data poll. Let's take a look here at the first round. First round, Lula, he's at 40% in the poll. Flavio Bolsonaro has 34% of the vote in the first round. A poll that just came out from the real-time big data poll. Look at the runoff here. Runoff. Flavio Bolsonaro wins by 1 percentage point of difference. This here, actually, it's basically a statistical tie. There's a margin on the high end and another on the low end. But this one is basically a statistical tie. In the second round, between Flavio Bolsonaro and Lula. So in the first round, Lula wins, even with a 6 percentage point lead. But in the second round, Flavio wins by 1 percentage point. What is this, Andrea? Full alert. Total alert. Here's the thing. Whoever wins, one, took it. What the people chose. I know very well that this will most likely not be the attitude and stance of the coup plotters if they lose. If they lose, very likely they will say there was fraud. The whole situation. That's nothing new. That's how coup plotters are. People who don't know how to lose. Coup plotters are always like that. Every time they win, they tuck their tail between their legs, congratulate the TSC, get certified, take office, and go off quietly. But when they lose, then they say there was fraud, blah, blah, blah. Is there anything worse than people who don't know how to lose in life? Now, if they win, they're getting the sash and becoming president of the republic. And you can get ready for more of the same and a whole lot of very little. Flavio is a Bolsonaro. That already says it all. Thank you. What does that mean, Andrea? Listen up. We need to be more engaged every day. Bringing awareness to people. The only thing that can change, it's awareness, information, and the truth reaching people. Otherwise, there's no way. Bluster will win. The lie will prevail. We'll be flooded with disinformation. And soon we will be defeated. So engagement of all of us Democrats. It has to be real. And it can't wait until tomorrow. It's for today, it's for now, because later crying over spilled milk won't help. We have to prevent the milk from spilling. Because after it spills, there's no point in crying. It's gonna be at least 4 years of total chaos. Mainly for the poorest and for Brazil's workers. Because you may not even like it. But those who defend the workers and the most vulnerable people, it's the progressive camp, it's the left, the far right, and the Bolsonaro supporters defend the elite they represent. The protection is for the white-collar criminals, which is what they are. There is still time. It's not too late to prevent the damage. So I invite you to get involved. Liking the live stream helps YouTube recommend it to more people. When you share, you reach more people yourself. When you comment, you bring more engagement. And we need to reach more and more and more people. And thank you all so much already, because I know that most of you are extremely engaged. And YouTube always sends me messages and says, you have an extremely loyal and engaged audience. Congratulations. That's the result of work done every single day. From Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m., I'm here live. Every day. On weekends, there are reruns. There's a debate channel in a new format. There's a WhatsApp group here for you to receive notifications as soon as there's something new. But I can't do much on my own. But with you, we're strong. And I believe that Lula is the best candidate. Thank you. I believe that Lula will have the best term of his life because this is the term that will truly go down in history because it will be the last one. He will turn 81 years old. So I truly believe this will be the greatest opportunity of his life to do something that no one has ever done before. Who knows? And that needs to be done. And if there's someone who can do it, given the candidates we have, it's Lula. That's why I always say Lula Tetra. My dear, give the live stream a like, comment, and share